My neighbour. It started at 4:43 a.m. The noise jolted me awake. It sounded like there was a giant truck revving its engine right there in our bedroom. Exhaust fumes wafted in through the open window. It was a bad way to start the day. "What is that?" moaned my wife. We'd both slept poorly because our daughter had crawled into our bed at 1 a.m. and kept kicking us in the face until we were both half hanging off the bed while she snored away. "Start of the apocalypse," I groaned. "Go back to sleep." "No way can I sleep through that racket," said Vanessa. She rolled out of bed and shut the window. That helped a little, but it still sounded like war out there. She pulled the curtains back and looked through the window. "It's the damn neighbour, mowing his lawn, before the sun's up. We need to have a heart-to-heart with him. Let him know that that's not okay." Keegan, our daughter, woke up crying. "Guess that's that," I muttered, getting out of bed myself. "I'll go talk to him after some coffee." "Bring me some too," said Vanessa. "Papa, bring me some Smarties," said Keegan. No Smarties for breakfast. Banana or toast, but not Smarties." "Fine," laughed Keegan. "Toast, cut into shapes." I sighed. This was really the last thing I wanted to be doing at 4:45 on a Saturday morning. Making coffee and cutting toast into animal shapes instead of drooling in my sleep and dreaming of a gentler world. I went into the kitchen and started the coffee and toast, and then looked out the living room window. Sure enough, there was Mr. Limsky, mowing his damn lawn, in his damn bathrobe no less. That was another thing I had no desire to do. Get into it with him about this, or really talk to him about anything, ever beyond a friendly wave and a howdy neighbour. By the time I was awake enough to form a coherent thought, it was almost 6 a.m, and I'd consumed 4 cups of coffee. Mr. Limsky was still at it, which was strange, because his yard isn't very big at all. It shouldn't take more than a 40-minute mow job. But here it was, an hour and 15 minutes later, and he was still at it. I got semi-dressed and stumbled outside. I walked across my own yard, which, I noted, needed mowing itself. Maybe I'll tell him that if he mows my lawn and promises to never start so early again, I'll let it go. But I knew that I wouldn't do that. I was a coward. As I got closer, I observed with some confusion that his lawn was already mowed. He was going over it a second time now. I walked up to our property line, denoted by the contrast between mowed and unmowed grass, and started waving my hands in the air, waiting for Mr. Limsky to notice me. He never did. He just stared straight ahead and kept pushing the mower. "Hey," I shouted, but it was no good. I could barely hear myself, so I knew that he wouldn't be able to hear me from across the lawn, right behind the lawnmower. God damn it. I walked across his yard until I was right behind him. "Hey!" Nothing. I tapped on his shoulder. Nothing. He just kept pushing the lawnmower onward, over the already mowed lawn. I didn't know what to do. I'll catch him after he finishes, I guess. He's in the zone. I shrugged and was getting ready to turn back to my house when I saw a trickle of what was presumably urine run down his bare leg. Jesus. I went back to my house and opened the door. Vanessa was reading a book to Keegan. She stopped when I came in and looked up. "Well, he couldn't hear me. I'll go over there once he stops. He's got to stop sometime, right? And, well, I'm a little worried about him, honestly. I saw him, wet himself." "Mr. Limsky peed his pants?" asked Keegan, She started laughing. Well, that sometimes happens, kiddo, I said. You used to do that. We do that a lot when we're kids, and then we don't do it for a while, and then when we get older, we sometimes do it again. That gave her something to think about anyway. Huh, said Vanessa. There's more, I said. He's already done with the lawn. He's just going over it a second time. Maybe he missed a few spots? Nope, it's perfect. Not a blade of grass higher than any other blade of grass. Said Vanessa. That's strange. Do you think he's okay? Should we call someone? I shrugged. Who are we going to call? The police? Tell them that our retired neighbour is mowing his lawn twice? While peeing himself? What will they say to that? By 8 a.m, I was done cooking the bacon, and Mr. Limsky was still at it, mowing his lawn for what must have been the 5th time. I tried not to think about it, but it was hard. After breakfast we should go somewhere, I said. It's a beautiful day. No sense staying cooped up all day. Why does Mr. Limsky keep mowing his lawn? Asked Keegan. I don't know, kiddo, I muttered. I don't know. You want to go to the playground or something? Keegan screamed in delight. I'm going to stay here and try to go back to sleep if that's okay, said Vanessa. Of course, I said. I felt like going back to sleep myself, even after all that coffee. But the desire to get far away from the sound of the lawnmower outweighed my tiredness. We ate, then Keegan and I headed to the playground. At 9 a.m, I got a text from Vanessa. Can't sleep. He's still mowing. 9:30. I'm starting to get really worried. This isn't normal. 10 a.m. I went over there and tried to talk to him, but it's like he's in a trance. Please come home. I sighed, but complied. I rounded up the kid and drove home. I felt a deep sense of unease that grew more intense the closer I got to home. You're afraid of an old man mowing the lawn? I chided myself. It didn't work, because my instinctive answer was, yes. I turned onto my street and prayed that Mr. Limsky would be done mowing the lawn by now. He'd tell us it was just a practical joke, and we'd all have a good laugh over it. But soon enough, I saw that wasn't going to happen. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw that he was still out there. I walked inside, and Vanessa was at the kitchen table, with bags under her eyes and a glass of wine in front of her. Please make it stop, she said. I don't know how to do that, I said, suddenly feeling very tired and in need of a drink myself. Call the police. Why don't you? I asked. Fine, she said. It's just that I do everything else around here, so I thought maybe you could help this one time. I held my tongue. I did plenty around there, but I knew that now wasn't the time to point that out. Okay, I said. I'll call the police. How has he not run out of gas by now anyway? I've been watching him, said Vanessa. He's got a can of gas in his driveway. Sometimes he grabs it when he passes by and gasses up while still pushing the mower. It's crazy. Please call the police. All right, I said. I looked up the number and proceeded to have one of the most awkward conversations of my life. It was 10 minutes with the receptionist, and then another 10 minutes with an officer. Finally, they agreed to come over and check it out. 15 minutes later, I watched out of the window as the cop car pulled into Mr. Limsky's driveway. A single cop got out and walked over to him. The cop was waving his hands and shouting, but it was no good. Then, the cop grabbed Mr. Limsky's shoulder and spun him around forcefully. This caused Mr. Limsky to finally let go of the throttle, and for the first time all day, the lawnmower stopped moving. It was still running though, because he had taped its safety shut-off down. I held my breath as I waited to see what would happen next. Mr. Limsky opened his mouth, and something emerged from it. It looked like a long, thin tentacle. The tentacle wrapped itself around the cop's neck and lifted him up into the air. Then a second tentacle emerged from Mr. Limsky's mouth and made its way down the cop's throat. I slammed the curtain shut and noticed that I too, like Mr. Limsky earlier, had wet myself. "What's going on out there?" asked Vanessa from the kitchen. "Did the police arrive?" I didn't have a good answer, so I didn't say anything. "Honey," said Vanessa, walking over, "are you okay?" From outside, we heard the whine of a new machine join in with the lawnmower. Vanessa opened the curtain, and I turned slowly to look out. The cop was out there, going around the old apple tree with a weed whacker, while Mr. Limsky was back pushing the lawnmower around again. It's 5 p.m. Besides Mr. Limsky, there are now 4 cops in his yard, doing various tasks. One is still at it with the weed whacker. Another has been going at the shrubs with a pair of clippers for hours now. But the one that concerns me the most is the one who's going around spraying the ground from a bottle full of neon blue liquid that Mr. Limsky at one point puked out of his mouth. I'm personally petitioning the family to pack up the car and start driving to Florida, where Vanessa's mother lives. I have no idea what's going on, but it doesn't look good. I wasn't sure what was more bizarre and terrifying. My neighbour mowing his lawn for the 13th straight hour, aided by 4 uniformed cops performing various other landscaping tasks, or the woman in the gas mask and plastic poncho that emerged from the tan Toyota Camry, which had wrapped itself around Mr. Limsky's apple tree. "Damn it, Kelly," she shouted through the mask, clearly unsteady on her feet after the crash. "No more driving for you, ever." I crouched down in my driveway behind my own car, which I had just finished loading in preparation for getting my family far away from whatever horrible thing was happening next door. I watched as the woman who was not impressed by Kelly's driving skills pulled a large blaster from under her poncho. That's the best way I can describe it. It wasn't a gun, it was a goddamn blaster. The woman pointed her blaster at Mr. Limsky and pulled the trigger. That was it for him. He exploded in a horrible mess of neon blue gore. A still writhing tentacle flew through the air and slapped against the windshield of the Camry. I saw the wipers go on in an effort to clear the thing away. I turned and saw my wife looking out the window of our house in horrified amazement. She had her hand over our daughter's eyes. Keegan was prying away at Vanessa's finger in order to get a look at the excitement. Me? I'd had enough excitement for the day. I had no idea who the blaster woman was, but I knew that she had one, and I struggled to come up with some way to get my family out of there without drawing anyone's notice. The woman turned her blaster to each of the 4 cops in turn and quickly reduced them into 4 gooey globs of neon blue slime. If I can just get back inside without her noticing me, we can slip out the back and Uber it out of Dodge. Doesn't matter where, just somewhere far away. "You!" shouted the woman. Her poncho was absolutely drenched with the insides of the things she'd just blown apart. "Hiding behind your car. Stand up. Slowly. Dan." I stood up with my hands in the air. "Please don't blast me," I said. "I'm not one of them, I swear." "We'll see about that," she said. "Meanwhile, your neighbour. He lived alone, yes?" "That's right," I said. "His wife died last year. Poor guy." I looked over at the puddle of strange gore that used to be Mr. Limsky. Poor guy indeed. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go inside his house and get cleaned up. You're going to go inside your house and wait there for us. If you try anything smart, I promise you, you'll end up like your neighbour here. Not a pretty sight, you agree? I took one more look, fought back the urge to puke, and nodded my head in earnest agreement. Same goes for your family. I see them through the window. Got it? Inside. Now. I didn't need any more encouragement. I ran back inside my house, back to Vanessa and Keegan. "Who is that?" asked Vanessa. "What's going on?" "You think I know?" I snapped. Then I sighed. "I don't. But I think maybe she's a good guy. I mean, she blasted those things out there." "What if Mr. Limsky was the good guy?" asked Keegan. "What if there are no good guys?" asked Vanessa. "I don't know," I said. "I don't know. But I think we have to take that chance. If she's a bad guy, then it's bad no matter what we do, I think. So I think we just have to think positively about this and hope that she's a good guy." "Think positively," said Vanessa. "Think positively? How about we think about survival?" I gritted my teeth. "That's what I'm saying, dear. I think that our best chance at survival is to stay put and talk things over nicely with the lady in the gas mask." "What's survival?" asked Keegan. "It's what we're all trying to do, kiddo," I explained, "on a day-to-day basis. And none of us will finally pull it off." "What?" "It means trying not to die," I said. "Are we going to die?" "Someday, kiddo. Someday. A long, long time from now." I wasn't sure about that, of course, but what else could I say? "Hey, you want to watch Tumbleleaf? Fig the Fox?" "Okay," said Keegan. I got an episode going, and then went into the kitchen, where Vanessa was pacing around in a circle. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Waiting here for them to come to us?" "No," I said. "Okay. I trust you, and I love you." "I love you too," I said. We waited. 20 minutes later, I saw them approaching my house. There were 2 women and 1 man, each wearing a gas mask. The woman in front was still carrying her blaster, but she had cleaned all of the blue substance off of her, and was wearing some of Mr. Limsky's clothes. I met them at the door. "Did any of you come into contact with any of them?" asked the woman in front. "No," I said. It was a lie. I had come up behind Mr. Limsky and tapped him on the shoulder. Vanessa had also approached him. "What is this about?" "Kelly," said the blaster lady to the woman behind her. "Test him." This Kelly pulled a large syringe out of her backpack and took a step towards me. "Now wait a damn minute here," I said. "You're not going to stick me with that needle until you tell me why I should let you. What's going on?" "You can submit to the test," said Blaster Lady. "Or we can presume that you have the virus and terminate you." "Well then, I'll submit to the damn test," I said, rolling up my sleeve and offering out my arm. "Not there," said Kelly, a second before she jammed the syringe into the side of my head. "Wow, that hurts." Kelly pulled the needle out. Then she went into her backpack again and brought out a test tube filled with green fluid. She unscrewed the tube and shot some of my brain juice into it. Then she put the lid back on, shook it, and held it up to the light. "He's clear," said Kelly. "Now for his family," said Blaster Lady. I watched in helpless horror as Kelly jammed a giant needle into first my wife's head, and then my daughter's head. Keegan couldn't stop crying, and it made me sick to my stomach. "They're all clear," said Kelly. "We're clear," I said. "Now, do you want to tell us just what the hell is going on? Let's start with who the hell you all are." "I'm Kelly Raymond," said the one with the needle. "My boyfriend got turned into a zombie. Like Mr. Limsky, but a little different. I had to keep cutting off his fingers." A zombie," I said. You had to keep cutting off his fingers. Of course. You can call me Ali, said Blaster Lady, taking off her gas mask. The others did as well. And yes, zombies. They're real. And the virus is growing stronger and more unpredictable by the day. Okay, I said. Zombies. I looked to the man in the group. And you are? Martin Henwood, said the man. I was a former colleague of your neighbour before he retired. Oh right, I said. Mr. Limsky was a coroner, I want to say? Mortician, said Martin. And he was a true artist, which is why I had to call him out of retirement for my latest job. Martin was obviously upset and fighting back tears, but he went on. A body came in for burial. The dead woman had apparently murdered her boyfriend in a particularly brutal way. There were rumours the necklace she still wore, even after her supposed autopsy, was cursed. It was a strange case indeed, because for starters, I saw no sign that an autopsy was ever performed. I suspected that the medical examiner had gotten spooked by the rumours and had opted to rule the death as unsuspicious without actually cutting into the body. Then too, as I looked her over, I saw that the necklace had no clasp. There was no way to get it off without cutting it off. I had the worst headache of my life, but I tried to stay focused. Let me guess. The necklace made her a zombie? We think that's the case, said Ali. Tell him what happened next, Martin. Martin cleared his throat. Well, I thought the whole matter was nonsense. A cursed necklace? I'm a man of science, not superstition. Or I was. When I started the embalming process, that's when I began to think twice. What came out of her body was not any kind of blood I have ever seen in my 25 years of experience. It was. I finished up for him. Neon blue. Just so, said Martin. And that's when I called Chuck Limsky. He'd never encountered anything like that before either, and in fact, didn't believe me. He wanted to see for himself, so he came over and I showed him the body. Like me, he was both fascinated and baffled. He wanted to spend some time with the body, so I left to get his sandwiches. When I got back, Chuck was standing in the morgue, dripping with blue slime, and the body was gone. What happened? I asked. It exploded, he said. The body just exploded. Oh, I have to go home and clean up, but I'll be right back. I've never seen anything like this. He left, and that was the last I saw of him, until... Martin trailed off and broke down into sobs. We caught up with Martin shortly after, said Ali. We had heard about the case of the necklace girl and thought it smelled strongly of zombie. Martin told us what had happened and brought us to Mr. Limsky's house. And now here we are, in your living room. What about the necklace? I asked, fighting back the thousands of thoughts fighting for control of my mind. Where did it come from? How does it turn you into a zombie? That's one of the things we're going to find out, said Ali. We have it with us, and are going to run it through a variety of tests. Typically, the virus is spread in the usual ways, like someone coughing on you, or exploding on you. The necklace is a new development. We're seeing a lot of new developments. We've been dealing with the basic zombie virus for some time now, and containing it well, but now things have changed. Our ultimate goal is to find a vaccine for the new super strains, but first we need to fully understand what we're up against. I looked over to the couch across the room, where Keegan was sitting on Vanessa's lap, still watching Fig the Fox. Vanessa was listening intently to our hushed talk, and I could see the terror etched into her face. I'm sure it was etched into mine as well. It's not safe for you here anymore, said Ali. The people I work with, used to work with, yes, they are concerned about the zombies, but they're just as concerned with people finding out about them. They're ruthless, and will be here within a day or so. Besides, we need a new ride, since Kelly wrecked our car. She's never allowed to drive again. I happen to notice that you have a nice, roomy SUV out there that could fit us all. And it will. We'll rest up for a few hours. Then we'll torch Mr. Limsky's property. Then we'll hit the road. It's up to you. Come with us, or stay behind for them to find you. All right, I said. Let me talk it over with my wife. We're on the road now. Ali's driving. I'm obviously not going to say where we're going. I just wanted to let everyone know that the zombie apocalypse is coming if we don't get there in time. White glowing eyes. The following is a very true experience. I've never actually wrote this down before, and I don't know if anyone has experienced this too. This happened between 1989 and 1990, and I was about the age of 4 years old. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it, and I wonder if, in some way unknown, it changed me. My parents had a house in the inland empire of Southern California, and at the time, my brother hadn't been born yet, so I was still the only child. To give you a layout, my parents' house was a 2-story house located in a cul-de-sac. On the bottom floor, there were 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, the living room, and the kitchen. The second floor was just the master bedroom and bath. All you could see from the street was the garage and one of the bedroom windows on the bottom floor, and the window of my mum's bathroom on the second floor. To get to the front door, you had to walk along the cement pathway that ran along the side of the house. You had to pass the first bedroom that you can see from the street. Then you passed the bathroom window, and then another bedroom window, and you would be at the front door. The backyard was beyond that point. My bedroom, at the time, was the bedroom next to the front door. Now, for some reason, my blinds weren't completely down to the bottom of the window. There was about a 6-inch gap with nothing covering it. I was pretty young, so I didn't really care much about it then. The bed was in the middle of the wall, across from my bedroom door, and to the left was the window. According to my mum, this all happened right before midnight. My mother was asleep in her room upstairs, and my dad was a policeman that worked nights in another city. I was fast asleep in my room, and out of nowhere, I suddenly awoke, looking up at the ceiling. I don't know what woke me, or if I just popped awake on my own. After my eyes adjusted to the night's light of my bedroom, I sat up and started looking around my room. All of a sudden, something caught my eye at the window, in the gap. First, I thought it was the street light reflecting on the window, but I knew for a fact that there was only one street light, and what I was looking at was 2 obvious glowing spots that were spaced apart as if on someone's face. Then I thought, is that a cat looking at me? And yes, I vividly remember thinking these things, trying to debunk this at 4 years old. I had remembered then that my cat Chelsea's eyes would reflect at night, but this looked different than that. The cat's eyes would have almost different colours when reflecting. These were 2 very solid, bright white glowing eyes, looking straight at me. I just stared at them, frozen stiff, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. I couldn't see a face at all. The eyes were just so bright, nothing else stood out. That void, or face, around the eyes looked blacker than the night. I thought again, well, if this is a cat, how could a cat be big like a person? And why would a cat stand up to stare in my bedroom? The curiosity got me, and I went for it. I flipped my covers off, turned my little 4-year-old body towards the window, and put my feet on the floor. This is the moment the creepiest thing happened, and it will forever be burned into my brain. I got off the bed and got on my knees to get a closer look at this so-called cat, when at this very moment, this faceless pair of glowing white eyes began to slowly and steadily tilt to the side, eyes still locked on me, not blinking once. The feeling of dread and fear shot through my body. Completely terrified, I burst into tears immediately and booked it down the hallway, through the living room and up the stairs to tell my mum. Although I was going as fast as I could, it felt like it took forever. When I got to my mum, I was so upset I couldn't get any words out. Tears were streaming down my face, and my mum was becoming seriously concerned at this point. She was able to calm me down just enough to get out the words, There's white eyes looking at me through my window, on the bottom." Stutter crying hard. "Are you sure?" my mum asked. I cried out, "Yes." She didn't even go down to look. She just called the police. I don't remember the time it took for them to arrive, or what they said, because I finally fell asleep in my mum's bed. I do remember faintly waking up to a knock on the door, and my mum going to open it. The cop speaks to her, and I hear her say, "Okay, thank you, good night," and she shuts the door. "Did they find it, Mummy?" I asked, half asleep. "No, honey, he said they couldn't find anyone," she told me softly. "It's okay now, just try to go back to sleep." It's safe to say that the next day, my whole window was covered. Years fast forward, and I'm in middle school now. Every now and then, I would think about that night. Sometimes I wondered if that moment was real, if those eyes were really there, those unforgettable white eyes. One day, a random thought came up, and I asked my mum if she remembered that night. She tells me, "Yes, of course. Why?" "I don't know. Just wondering, I guess," I said. Then my mum proceeds to say, "Well, I never told you this, but when the deputy came out that night, he told me they made it a priority to get out to our house as soon as they could, because not very long before I called 911, they received another call from someone else, reporting that someone was looking in their window, in our same neighbourhood." Hearing that sent chills down my spine, and to this day, I wonder who or what was looking at me that night. In my room. My sister Penny was always afraid of the upstairs at our house. She never went up there at night. Our main conversation every night went something like this. Penny would say, "Go upstairs and find me my white sweater, black jeans and leather jacket." The clothing items would change from night to night, but she always asked me to get her things. But she wouldn't go up without an adult after dark. I would ask, "Why can't you go and get them?" "Because something is up there," she would say. "I sleep up there and nothing's happened to me," I would respond. For her to simply say, "Just wait, someday it will." Okay, I admit it's creepy as hell up there. I'll give you the layout. There are 2 rooms that lead into each other, and there is an attic above and one on each side. The house is well over 100 years old, and there's a banister over the stairs, but it's closed off by a door. I remember Penny coming home from dates, and before she would take her boyfriend upstairs, she would send him up with a flashlight to check the closets and under the beds, even though I was in one of those beds. Once, when our mother asked her why she would not sleep upstairs in her room, she rattled off numerous reasons, You can see small lights come out of the closet, and you can hear footsteps and heavy breathing in the attics. There's always a sense of being watched a little too closely. I'd respond, "That's ridiculous. I've never seen anything or heard anything. You should stop letting her sleep on the couch every night." Our mother would reply, "She's okay. She can sleep where she wants. She's not hurting anyone." I think my mum knew, but since nothing was bothering me at the time, she overlooked it. Better to have one daughter on the couch than two, I guess. I even took this problem to my dad, as he was always on my side, and Mum seemed that she was always on Penny's side. Eventually, my sister got married and moved out when she was 18 and I was 11. Then, I guess the ghost, or whatever, thought it was my turn. In the attics, I would hear stomping, and it wasn't just in one attic, it was all three. There were whispers in the closet, like two children having a conversation. The conversations I overheard were from talking about dolls sometimes. They were trying to figure out what happened to someone named Uncle Doffy, and sometimes it sounded as if they were discussing how they could run away. I didn't get a bad feeling from the girls in the closet. I was always being watched all day and all night, and lived in a constant fear of panic. When I was upstairs, every nerve was on edge. The worst thing was this big black shadow in the middle of the night, asking where Penny was. The voice wasn't the voice of a kid. It sounded like it came from someone who smoked 4 packs a day for 50 years. The black shadow asked after my sister 6 times every night. When I would not answer out of fear, the shadow would throw things at me. Books, figurines, even pictures. Then, it was my turn to sleep on the couch. And then, I understood my sister. It wasn't an excuse. She actually heard these things. I never understood why I didn't until after Penny moved out and I was bullied by this ghost or whatever. That's what this entity was, a bully, something that always had to have power over us, the young, powerless sisters that lived in the house. Fast forward 2 years after Penny was gone, she had her own home. My oldest sister, Jeannie, couldn't afford the house she was renting due to being in the middle of a divorce. So she brought her 3 kids and moved in with us. Jennifer was 5, Kevin was 3, and her youngest Amanda was 2. This meant Jennifer would be staying with me, and we were both expected to sleep upstairs. We were woken up all the time by stomping, and when Jennifer would start to cry from being scared, I would tell her it was because the house was old, and that's what old homes did, settling at night. Exactly what my mum always told me when I heard odd noises in our home. Jennifer's 6th birthday rolled around, and my mother buys her one of those creepy clown dolls, you know, the ones with a plastic head, a wire body under its clown clothes, and having the most insanely evil laugh. That clown was always going off by itself at night, but never during the day. One night, I decided I had enough, so I got out of bed and went over to take the batteries out. But when I opened the battery pack, no batteries were inside. I told my mum and older sister, but no one cared, or they thought it was an overactive imagination. Penny believed me. So the next day I got up and threw it in the attic, but it would still go off in the middle of the night. Then one day I came home, and the doll was out of the attic and sitting on the chair across from my bed. When I asked who put that there, no one knew. We ended up burning that doll. Penny came and burned sage in our home. Now that I'm grown up, my kids who like to stay with my mum always tell me about their things being moved and their chargers being jerked from the wall. But I still feel that it waits for this day for Penny to come home. Maybe because she feared it the most, I don't know. But I know that that bully brought me a lot closer to the sister whom I couldn't possibly live without now. Out of the dark. My first experience with the supernatural was one of the most terrible life experiences I can remember. It happened when I was young and dumb and wanted to go out into the world and explore. While I was out of my home country of Canada, I witnessed a horror I soon hoped to forget. I had gone on a trip with some of my buddies to Montana, just below my home province of Alberta. We were originally going to stay in Yellowstone National Park, but decided to head to Glacier National Park first, before camping out at Yellowstone for a few days. We finally reached Glacier Park after a 6-hour drive, and had just enough time to do a little hiking before going to our hotel in the nearby town to rest and move on towards Yellowstone. We had gotten to the park around 4:30 p.m. and decided it was a great idea to hike after dark. So we hiked up the trail, looking at the glorious views of rivers and waterfalls of the Avalanche Creek Trail. The light began to fade rather quickly while we were around 2/3 of the way up, and we had hiked into the trail about 10 kilometres. So it would take us around 2 hours to walk back down from that point. This is when stuff goes downhill. Myself and my friends were all outdoorsmen and loved to go hiking and travel around the Rocky Mountains. But we were still inexperienced when it came to night hiking. Since the trail we were on wasn't as travelled as other parts of the hike, the trail was hard to follow in the dark. Although every now and then we would see a sign that notified us that we were going in the right direction. At some point, maybe 1/3 of the way down the mountain, we ended up going off the trail, following a little rabbit trail, thinking we were still on the correct path. We began to figure out that we were definitely not going the right way, as my friend checked his compass, which showed we were heading deeper into the Rocky Mountains, miles and miles of forest. Then begins the mass panic. My friends and I immediately turned round and began walking the way we came. But the trail we were following didn't look the same as it had before, which led us to be even more lost. That is when we collectively noticed how quiet it had gotten. No insects, no birds, nothing. It was dead silence. I knew this was a bad sign, as I'm a hunter, and when it gets quiet like this, it means that there's a large predator around, and it's hunting. We had literally become prey to some unknown beast in the woods. We all began getting a sudden spike of anxiety when I let the guys know what was up. That's when we hear it. A noise that brought terror. A guttural howl from up the mountain. And it was then followed by many more. My heart went into my throat, and the terror I felt made me shake. Most of my friends did the same, all but 2, the others had already dipped, and had begun running in the direction opposite to the house. We all followed soon after, running ourselves ragged, until we looked behind and saw the eyes shine of something that was much larger than we had anticipated. The eyes were at least 6 feet off the ground and moving towards us fast. That's when we split up, running in random directions, hoping to lose these beasts. It was never going to happen. I could hear the breath of one of these things, about 20 feet behind me, and gaining. All of a sudden, my friend appears from the trees to my right, and we end up running together until I cut off from him, hoping to escape. I know I left him to die that night, but it was a last-ditch effort that worked out to my advantage. I heard his screams from my left, and ran as fast as I could away from them, with tears rolling down my face as I hear his screams for help, and then him shrieking in pain, and then nothing, as if he never existed. I continue running down the mountain until I see a familiar sight ahead of me. It was one of the trail signs showing how far you were on the trail. I stopped, checked where I was, and started running again, hoping to get away from the creatures on the mountain. Another kilometre down the trail, I began hearing howls getting closer and closer by the moment, causing me to run even harder. Looking ahead, I see the sign saying parking lot, and zoom past it in my panic, looking for the keys in my pocket, and scrambling towards the only vehicle still left in the parking lot, which luckily was my car. I use my fob to unlock my car from a distance, and run as hard as I can towards it, slamming into the side of my door, opening it, then hopping in and starting the car. I look out of my window towards the trail entrance, and I see 2 pairs of eyes staring back at me, from just out of the range of the lampposts. They stare at me, before disappearing back into the brush as I drive away, never looking back. I arrived at the ranger station by the park entrance, and ran inside, looking dishevelled and terrified. I began telling the ranger at the desk what had just happened. He then looked at me with a sad face, as if he knew something like this would happen, and called up the search and rescue team to come in the morning to look for them. They were never found. Do not enter. When I first moved into my apartment, the landlord told me a strange thing. Always check that the room is the right one before entering. Sage advice from the master of the obvious, you might say. Truth be told, I hadn't really been paying much attention up to that point. My landlord was the type of woman that put no effort in sounding happy to meet you, and whatever Eastern European accent she had certainly didn't make it any easier to understand. I probably should have asked a few more questions, but signing a lease wasn't a process I wanted to prolong any longer than I had to. Besides, it's not like I really needed an explanation. My early childhood diet didn't consist exclusively of paint chips, after all. For how cheap the rent was, I wasn't about to worry over a bad joke. The place was one of those oddities of design that seemed to suck the fun out of everything anyway. Nothing but a series of copy and paste apartments, stacked on top of each other for 13 laborious floors. Each one was practically identical, right down to the way the front door stuck when it rained. Not a single window among them. They even came furnished with a full set of drab appliances and furniture, devoid of any particular style or taste. It's like living in a filing cabinet. Sterile and lacking a life of its own. You'd think we all lived in alphabetical order and referred to each other by apartment numbers. My accountant would love this place. As dull as the accommodations were, it didn't take more than a month for things to get interesting. They were little things at first, mostly just noises. Nothing particularly sinister, but they did a great job of keeping me up at night. One night, I'd hear unintelligible whispers coming from my neighbour's bathroom that lasted for hours. The next, I'd swear I heard far-off wolf-like howls from the floor above, despite a rigidly enforced no-pets policy. Once, I even caught the unmistakable sound of crashing waves on a sandy beach from an apartment on the 6th floor. Occasionally, I would hear the noises coming from rooms in my own apartment. However, nothing would be out of place when I checked. I may have forgotten to mention that I live alone. It took a bit longer for anything really strange to happen though. It was 4 months into my stay when the sound of clinking glass and slamming cabinets woke me. It came from the kitchen, and I knew it had to be an intruder. I quietly slipped out of bed and grabbed the aluminium baseball bat I keep next to the door to remind me how I really should get more exercise. I must have looked absolutely ridiculous, tiptoeing down my carpeted hallway to the kitchen, with how much noise the intruder was making. When I reached the doorway to my kitchen, I chanced to peek inside. Sure enough, I saw a dark figure furiously rooting through my kitchen cabinets. Tightening my grip on the baseball bat, I flipped on the light switch. Lucky thing I did, too. Otherwise, I might have beaten an innocent old woman to death. My midnight intruder startled at the sight of me, her wrinkled face twisting into a mixture of fright and confusion. The unassuming dirty dressing gown and fluffy pink slippers she wore seemed an odd choice for a burglar. I recognised the woman. She was the old lady who lived 2 doors down from me. I'd even helped her with her groceries that very evening. After managing to calm the poor woman down and assuring her that she was not in fact in her own flat, my elderly neighbour apologised profusely. She'd woken up in the middle of the night craving a cup of tea, she explained, and must have gotten lost in the dark, unlit building. How she managed to slip into my apartment without either of us noticing was beyond me. She must suffer from dementia, because she was absolutely convinced that she should still be in her own. I don't think she understood just how close she came to a baseball bat to the head, and I wasn't in the mood to explain it to her. I tried to be as polite and understanding as I could as I escorted her back to her apartment, but something was bothering me. Something about the whole affair made the little hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't until I locked my front door behind me that I realised what it was. Before going to bed, I remember quite clearly locking the door from the inside. I racked my brain all night, but I just couldn't explain how the old woman could have wandered into my apartment without opening my front door. Having no one else to ask, I decided to bring up the subject to my next door neighbour the next day. Cornering him in the hallway that evening, I had trouble broaching the subject. When I'd finally stammered out my story, however, he seemed rather unsurprised by the whole ordeal. Apparently, this sort of thing happened all the time. Not just to the old lady down the hall either. Almost everyone in the building had a similar tale. It was the doors, he said. They didn't always lead to the same place. Sometimes you would be facing a door that led to your bathroom, only for it to lead to your bedroom instead. It could even lead to a completely different apartment on a completely different floor. Once, he heard that someone's closet door had once opened to the alley on the north side of the building. It was a pretty crazy thing to think your door could lead anywhere in the building without notice, but my neighbour seemed to believe that the phenomenon stretched farther than that. To get around this little nuisance, he suggested I do what the other tenants do. The generally accepted method was to make 2 marks on either side of each doorway in the apartment with a marker. That way, you could tell if the room you were about to enter was the right one at a glance. If the 2 marks didn't match up, you were staring at a doorway to the unknown. At least, that was the idea. The old lady must have forgotten to check when she stepped into my kitchen, or at least not seen it in the dark. My neighbour seemed rather annoyed by the thought. He made it painfully clear that I wait for the door to go back to normal before using it. I should, under no circumstances, ever enter a room that shouldn't be there. Always check first. My neighbour experienced the anomaly himself in the past, but only as a mild annoyance. Even still, he was very adamant that I take the matter seriously. But how could I? Who in their right mind would believe a story as insane as this? Sure, it could explain how the old lady down the hall got into my apartment without using the front door, but it created all sorts of other questions. And the last thing I wanted to question were the laws of physics. Mass hysteria, it had to be. A building filled to bursting with lunatics. In the end, I found it simpler to write my neighbour off as a head case and move on with my life. However, I did as he suggested. With a red Sharpie secretly borrowed from work, I drew a line on each side of every door jamb in my apartment. It was more out of curiosity than anything else. Or maybe I was just daring the universe to prove me wrong. Either way, after a few weeks, I'd gotten into the habit of checking if both marks were there before I entered a room. I saw it as a little inside joke. When in Rome, do as the wackos do. Eventually, it became a silly little ritual I would do to remind myself the world wasn't crazy, just the guy next door. I'd been living in my apartment for a little over a year before it happened to me again. I'd gotten up in the middle of the night to grumpily use the bathroom like I'd done many times before. I was on autopilot. On my way back to bed, I lifted my tired eyes to the doorway leading to the bedroom and grinned at the now familiar red. But I hesitated. There was only one mark. Though only lit by a small lamp in the hallway, I was absolutely sure there was no red mark on the bedroom side of my door. I stood there for a while, blinking sleep from my eyes and trying to stare the second mark back into existence. The bedroom looked the same as I'd left it minutes before, save for the missing mark on the doorway. Were my eyes playing tricks on me? Maybe I was dreaming. Or was my kooky neighbour's story the real deal? As ridiculous as it sounded, I was sure of one thing. There had been 2 marks on my trip to the bathroom. I didn't go in right away. I wanted to, but a small part of me took what my neighbour told me seriously. First, I waved an empty hand in the doorway. Nothing particularly spooky happened. Emboldened by the knowledge that this phantom room wouldn't immediately melt my skin off, I took a tentative step inside. At first glance, nothing looked out of the ordinary. Everything was where I remember leaving it. Even my comforter was thrown aside, just like I'd been sleeping under it minutes before. But then why was the mark missing from my door frame? I was certain there had to be something different about this room. In that moment, my neighbour didn't seem so crazy, and all I needed to prove it was to find what was wrong with this room. I tore open my closet and flipped my mattress in search of clues. Every drawer was emptied on the floor in my quest. I even tore the carpets up at the ends to look underneath. I looked everywhere in my madness, but found nothing. Everything was where it should be. Somehow, though, I knew this wasn't my bedroom, and it wasn't until I turned back to the door to check if the second mark was really missing that I realised what was different about it. This room had no doors.